Drop 2 voicings are one of the most important voicings for us to learn, but they are notoriously intimidating. In today's video, I'm going to show you how I broke this voicing down into 3 simple steps that you can follow to master them. As I became a better player, I started to realize that my voicings sounded kind of old-timey. They didn't have all the richness and color like my favorite artists, like Bill Evans with these colorful movement. And that was when I discovered the voicing they were playing, which is called drop 2. And those drop 2 voicings have so much color, so much richness, that it really elevated my playing right away. I like to think about drop 2s as being like a choir. So we've got a soprano, an alto, a tenor, and a bass. And in this case, I've got all these notes really nice and close together. We call this a closed position voicing. Now, if we number these from the top down, soprano being 1, alto being 2, tenor being 3, and then bass being 4, the idea of drop 2 just means that we take the alto note and we drop it an octave. So the alto becomes the bass, and you end up with a chord that's like this: soprano, alto, tenor, bass. Now, as piano players, we often play these block chords, and this is exactly the same voicing we just talked about. I got the same 4 notes in my right hand, and I've got an octave on the bottom. Though whatever the melody note is doubled in my left hand. One of the big advantages of drop 2 voicing is that we don't have to have this doubling of the outside note. So we went from a 5-note voicing with doubling to a 4-note voicing that doesn't double at all. The other advantage to this voicing is that it gives our melody note a little more breathing room. If we take this chord through with different inversions, you'll notice sometimes you get a chord like this, where the melody note is a second apart, right? But if we do this drop 2, where we take this G and drop it down the octave, now we end up with this voicing that gives a lot more space up here in the top. So it really helps our melody come through more clearly. So these drop 2 voicings are pretty easy to understand, but when we go to actually try and play them, there's a lot of kind of mental gymnastics we have to go through to make them work. And for that reason, I find them very difficult to master. So over the next few minutes, we're going to approach this in 3 simple steps. And I really want you to practice each of these steps individually. And I think by the time you get to the end, you'll find these drop 2s to be much more approachable. Let's take this great Duke Ellington tune called Satin Doll and see how we might apply our drop 2 voicings to it. So to get started, we're going to take our melody note, which is an A, and we're going to try and find what the alto line would be underneath it. We're going to do that by using a note that comes from the chord. So we're using D minor, and if A is our top note, our alto note is going to be a third below it. It's going to be F. And the way I found that was just taking an inversion of D minor 7 that has their melody on top, and I used the top 2 notes. Now, when we're playing a chord melody like this, sometimes we have a note like this A, which is part of the D minor 7 chord, but sometimes we end up with this note like G, which is not part of D minor 7. In this case, I'm going to play a diminished chord that has that G on top. So in that case, I'm going to end up with a G and E, right? It's part of this B flat diminished chord. So here in E minor 7, we've got a B on top. So we want an E minor 7 chord with that B on top. And we're going to do the same idea. We're going to alternate. When we get to the A, which is the non-chord tone, we're going to play a diminished chord. So it's going to be F sharp. So you're going to continue this way all the way through the song, where you're going to pick out what you think the right alto note is. And you get to be a little bit creative with this. Maybe you like my idea of using diminished chords to pair with it, or maybe you have another idea. There's no hard and fast rule. This is up to you as the player. Now, I know that this might seem kind of basic, but it's really important that you can get all the way through your melody by picking your alto note like this. And in our next step, we're going to introduce the drop. Every Friday afternoon on Zoom, I host a free jazz workshop, and I would love if you would come. See, we're starting to set up the techniques that are really important for us to play holiday tunes. And over the next 8 weeks, our Jazz Library members are going to learn how to play 4 different holiday tunes in 4 different styles, and we're going to wrap the whole thing up with this really cool holiday Christmas concert showcase thing. So I would love to have you join us. You can learn more about those workshops and how the membership works down in the description. All right, it's time for us to introduce the drop. We're going to take these same 2 notes, the soprano and the alto, remember 1 and 2, and we're going to drop the 2. So the F, the 2 is going to become the F down here. So we're going to end up with an interval of a 10th. We don't always get a 10th, but we really often do get a 10th. And this is such a great, beautiful interval. This is where a lot of our color comes from. All right, so let's go to the next note, which was G. We paired it with the E. All right, now here on the E minor chord, remember we had this? B and G. We're going to take the G down the octave. And this one we paired with the F sharp. When we get to the D7, we had this. But when we drop the C down the octave, oh, it's got some dissonance, but in a really nice kind of way. There's still so much clarity in our melody note. Now, it's really important that you can play all the way through the melody this way. And you want to make sure you're using like the top of your hand, the pinky and the ring finger, to play the melody. And then your left hand is going to play those bottom notes. That's going to free up the other 3 fingers that we have on the bottom of our right hand to fill in chord notes. Now here in step 3, we're going to really put all this together. I know that step 1 and step 2 seems kind of elementary and basic, but I really encourage you to go through those before you take on step 3. All right, so to fill in our chords, we start where we left off, and then you fill in the notes of the chord in your right hand. So remember though, we've already accommodated for this F, we've dropped it down an octave. So really we're going to skip over that one, and we're going to just play the D and the C, right? So this is the chord that we started with. We took this F, the alto line, we dropped it down here, and we removed it from the top. Our next chord, we said we were going to play this diminished chord, right? So to play a diminished chord with G on top is going to be this. And we take the E off, right? We played it down here. And there's our chord. Now the E minor. So we started here. We dropped the 2 down. Now we're going to fill in the rest of those chords. Remember, we alternated this with the F sharp. It's alternating between this and this diminished chord. All right, so over the D7, we had 2 notes, C and D. We said that was a crunch, right? But we're going to take the C down the octave, and now we're going to fill this in with notes of D7. F sharp and A in the middle. And now to alternate this melody, we're going to actually play D7, C7, D7. And then we're going to do a kind of a colorful version of that for the D flat 7, where I've put a G on the bottom. So putting this all together, we get a really nice harmony that we can use over Satin Doll that doesn't double any notes. A big part of the versatility that we have as jazz piano players comes from the number of different voicings that we have. We can create so many different colors, from closed voicings to open spread voicings to dissonant voicings to rich, lush voicings. So to learn my most important voicings, you've got to watch this video right here next.